The writing process on It's Garry Shandling Show started out right. Alan Zweibel and I wrote the pilot in like a week in the Parker Meridian Hotel. Just sat there and banged that thing out. And we sent it to Showtime, and they were actually blown away by the script. Then as we started having to do 17 a season, 20 a season, 21 a season, well, a show like that should never have to do that many. Not that kind of show. I'm frustrated as we talk about it that the scenario was such that we had to do 21 of those. It was...
How many would you have preferred each year?
I think absolutely the way that HBO has come to do 10 a season, or at the most 13 a season, has proven to be the way to do it. And Ali G is 6 episodes. You don't need to bang people over the head. You don't need to do it every week. If it's quality, you let it ride. I've always been against time slots. I've always been against structure. And I think the internet is proving me to be right. That's not how life functions. It's not planned. It's not cut up into segments. And if you try to do that, you're doomed for failure, which is what some of the networks are struggling with now, is how do we keep up with other things where people are watching in different ways? Well, I was thinking that 30 years ago. So nevertheless, because of the business model, we were doing 21 of those, and it was very hard to come up with stories about the human condition when we had so many techniques and, what's the word I'm looking for, constructs, and there's another word that show had, gimmicks. And Alan and I always agreed that the show became gimmick-oriented because when we couldn't come up with a story, we could rely on being funny with a clock that would... Time flies and a clock would fly through the air, or something funnier than that. And we started to rely on those elements, and we had writers who were hilariously funny with that kind of stuff. And so we started to rely upon that more than the story itself. And so after 65, I was sitting in the editing room one day watching one, and I thought, this has reached it's gone past its peak. Really funny guys. And it became a room-written show, writer's room written. And I have fun in those situations. I love to pitch as much as the next guy and get in that game. And you have to be careful. You're only writing jokes usually, because you're not going to find deep story that way. And it becomes result-oriented. We had to get one to shoot on the air. So I thought it had accomplished its goal and just stopped. Just said, I can't do anymore. While it was a breakthrough show and received like an Emmy nomination for writing, the first cable series maybe to be nominated for an Emmy, while for the Graduate episode, which actually then was a parody of The Graduate, but then had the real-life emotion of a man having his girlfriend's mother hit on him, so it was a story. That was the 6th episode that we shot. And I thought that was where it kind of peaked. And then it got crazier, and there's something to be said for that. I mean, recently I had to look at one for some event, and it was hilarious. And didn't add up to a lot, but hilarious all the way through. So it was time to make a change, just because the show had taken on its own life and run away. And that's not to say that it had just, it was hugely improvised and very late nights, and I would be with Alan just improvising a scene and shooting it and just going completely silly. Enough to where I had covered that completely silly thing. I remember there was an episode where my wife, last season, Gary gets married, and I do refer to those characters in the third person because it's not me. I'll go back and forth with it, but Gary, as I would even talk about, and I don't talk about myself as we sit here as Gary. Got married, and his wife said, "Aren't you going to eat the vegetables?" And all of a sudden she turns into his mother, and we got the mother to sit in, and it's a very traditional kind of usage of substituting the mother for the wife. But what happened is I freaked out to such an extent that it was my mother that I ran up to the camera and grabbed the camera and I said, it's my mother. And I still remember that. It's just as goofy as could be. And, set the stage for going the complete other direction in Larry Sanders, really. So you go from a guy who hosts a talk show to playing a character that's completely silly to now exploring